What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Great League Remix once again, and a Pokemon that I haven't really seen anyone else really showcase or talk about, and that is HISUIAN QWILFISH. This Pokemon shares the exact same typing as Drapion, which we know is absolutely everywhere in the Open Great League, and this Pokemon has the exact same pacing as Drapion with the Poison Sting Aqua Tail combo. It does run either Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball, or Ice Beam. I decided to use Ice Beam just because I don't have charged jams. I'm trying to save them for the Rocket event coming up. But I paired it with a Dragonite on the lead and a Tinkaton in the back to try and lure out any ground type Pokemon, punish it with Aqua Tail and Ice Beam, and either grab shields or flip switch. And then the core between Tinkaton and Dragonite is really strong. Tinkaton only has 2 weaknesses in ground and fire, and then Dragonite resists both of those. So without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Okay, so right away we've got Dragonite into Greninja. This is a pretty fantastic lead, and our opponent is staying in, which is pretty surprising. Night Slash from a Greninja will not KO, but it will hurt. But I can take it and live it in the yellow. They actually come in with an Amoonguss, and I am able to get a Dragon Claw off just for some nice chip. And then I can instantly pivot into my QWILFISH. Now, QWILFISH walls every single move that the Amoonguss can learn, so I'm not really worried about any one charge move here. However, we are very glassy, and I am going to go for the Ice Beam just to secure the knockout in case an Aqua Tail wasn't enough. But we do secure that knockout, and we have maintained switch. They come back in with a Greninja. I'm just going to go for an Aqua Tail for some chip damage here. That way I can Fairy Wind down later in the game. And now I'm just going to let my QWILFISH go. I have switch, and I'm going to come in with my final Pokemon, and they have their own Tinkaton in the back. And unfortunately, we do lose CMP in this matchup. I expect to lose CMP in pretty much every Tinkaton mirror, just because I do have actually really good IVs from a very lucky trade that I was able to get. So their first Bulldoze does not lower our defense, and ours does lower theirs. So we already have an advantage going in this matchup, and we're able to grab a shield, and I made an absolutely soul read catch onto the Bulldoze. This is double resisted on a Dragonite at 1 HP. And yeah, my opponent knows with a 2 shield and clearing a debuff, there's no way my opponent can win that matchup. Okay, Dragonite into Charjabug. This is a pretty neutral matchup. I'm going to go for a catch onto my QWILFISH. I am unsuccessful, but my opponent ends up throwing anyways. We can take one Exorcer pretty comfortably here. They're going to come in with a Pidgeot, and I know they're going to at least shield once and probably go for the full farm down. And no, they actually call it. That's crazy. So able to get to a second Aqua Tail now, and we do get the Pidgeot very low. And I know I can completely wall the moveset here on the Tinkaton, so at least I can get a nice Fairy Wind farm down and come out basically with full HP, so neutralizing that Pidgeot in that matchup there. And they have a Jellicent in the back. Now, I basically am just looking for a Surf catch here, and they do correctly shield the first play rough. They do throw the Surf as soon as they get it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let the Surf go. I'm going to over farm. I'm going to go for the catch. I'm unsuccessful. Once again, my opponent holds onto their energy really well. And now I can connect with a Dragon Claw. They are going to instantly throw what could be a Shadow Ball here, so I will respect it, but it is just the Surf, and they are going to over farm. I'm watching for a catch. There is the Charjabug. They do get to a move here, but this means they are energy dry at this point. So even though my game completely freezes and is trying to throw the game on me as hard as it possibly can, I can go for a CMP sack swap catch there. Losing CMP, but that's okay. Discharge does KO, which means I can get a full farm down, come out with a Dragon Claw loaded. Jellicent cannot survive this from this range. My opponent knew that, so they actually resigned the match. Okay, into the next match, we've got a Dragonite into a Toxapex. This is kind of an awkward lead just because Toxapex is so bulky, and it's just a very neutral matchup. But my opponent only farms up to a Brine, so I will actually let this go because Dragonite, I believe, wins the zeros as long as you throw on good timing. So I am going to go for the Dragon Claw. Zeros, assuming they bait with a Brine, which is kind of unnecessary in the zeros if you know your opponent's not going to shield. But they were probably expecting a very glassy Shadow Dragonite to shield, but we actually are able to dictate switch. But unfortunately, my opponent gets an energy lead on a Diggersby in the back, which is not great because we have two Pokemon weak to ground in the back. Fortunately, they pivot into their Greninja, and I'm able to make a catch of a Night Slash onto my Tinkaton. Not really sure why they went for that, because that is resisted on my Qwilfish, maybe just expecting me to shield because it's glassy, but they do finally full send the Hydro. And at this point, I'm just letting my Tinkaton go because I just need farm on my Qwilfish. And they do go for a Night Slash, isn't quite enough to KO, and I actually come out loaded with energy. I am going to throw the Bulldoze and fish for this debuff because this debuff would actually be pretty huge here. And unfortunately, we do not get it. But we are pretty much loaded with energy, and as long as I can survive... I mean, I've got 2 shields, so I mean, as long as I can outpace, really, then we should be in an okay matchup here. They do shield the first, and they don't get a Scorching Sands debuff, so now I am going to full send an Ice Beam here, hoping they don't shield, because they know they can survive an Aqua Tail at this range, and they do. So now that is great, because that puts them in Aqua Tail range, which means now all I have to do, even if they bait with a Fire Punch, is make it 2 back-to-back Aqua Tails, and after we see that Quick Attack go through, we know that we have made it. So here comes the first Aqua Tail. Here comes the second. My opponent doesn't even throw the Fire Punch. Maybe worried about a catch. And we are able to take that win. Qwilfish absolutely sweeping endgames. That's what you like to see. Dragonite into Toxapex again. So are we going to play this match out the same way, or are we going to play it a little bit differently is the question. I'm going to go for a Dragon Claw. This will do some okay chip, and my opponent has not thrown yet, so this is a little bit different. I end up going for a Sludge Wave catch onto my Qwilfish. Did they full send? Of course they didn't. They were baiting a Dragonite, but we do lure out a Corviknight, so this is likely their ground answer, I guess. I mean, it's a Sand Attack user. We do actually grab a shield in this matchup, which is a little bit strange from my opponent. Especially because they have absolutely no reason to shield out there. They're not threatened by any one charge move. I am going to come back with my Dragonite because I know they cannot Sand Attack farm me down, and I am going to full send a Superpower because even though my defense is lowered, this is actually on a CMB tag, which is also massive because we can just let this go. Tinkaton with 2 shields should be able to take care of this Corviknight. Obviously, they will be able to get to a charge move before us, but we can just shield up the Iron Head and then look to overfarm. We can get a pretty nice overfarm here too, and throwing right before my opponent makes it to another move. If my opponent shields, that would be pretty interesting, but they don't. And they actually have a Greninja in the back, so I'm going to farm up past the Play Rough, and now I'm baiting with a Bulldoze. Greninja is glassy, so we do actually grab that shield, and now I am going to shield a potential Hydro Cannon here. And are they going to go for the catch? They are, and unfortunately, that is a very great catch for my opponent. I should have been more aware. I did not see that second one go through, and I wasn't sure how much health the Toxapex had on it, but I actually know I can live a Brine from this range. So what we're going to do, they actually full send a Sludge Wave knowing that does more damage, is I'm going to farm do 100 energy, go for the Bulldoze to knock out the Toxapex, and now I just go 1 in the move to the Play Rough, and from this range, Play Rough is super effective damage. It KOs the Greninja, and somehow we are still able to take that win off the bulk of Tinkaton and the versatility in its coverage. Okay, Amoonguss in the lead. I'm going to play out this one pretty similarly. I'm going to go for a catch on my Qwilfish because everything is resisted, and my opponent actually stays into throw, which is crazy because, as I just said, everything's resisted. Sludge Bomb, Grass Knot, Foul Play. It's Astonish, literally everything. So I'm not sure why my opponent's staying in this matchup and shielding. So this is crazy. So now I'm going to start shielding back because what do you have in the back that is this weak to Qwilfish? I mean, literally anything would be better than Amoonguss. So I'm going to overfarm here. I'm going to go for the Ice Beam on good timing, and we grab both shields from my opponent. So at this point, I'm just going to let this go. I have no idea what's in the back, but I'm still able to also get to an Aqua Tail. This will do some OK chip, and I'll put it in farm down range for my Dragonite, which is nice because we've banked a shield, and they do get to a charge move. I think I can live this probably low, yeah, just barely. So now pivoting into my Tinkaton, getting a nice Fairy Wind energy lead. Now what is in the back? But okay, we've got a Primate. Primate would have been better. And I guess Togetic would not have had a great matchup there, but still, man, that was very interesting play by my opponent. They definitely probably should have come in with Primate, but I guess Primate would have to full send close combats, and the pacing of Aqua Tail and Rage Fist is the same, so yeah, it's an awkward Pokemon for my opponent's team. But either way, they have a Togetic in the back, and we're able to get 2 player offs to knock them out, and now we just come out loaded with energy. And yeah, what is Primate going to do here? They are at back-to-back moves, so I am going to catch because I lose CMP. But this was kind of an unnecessary catch, and it is the close combat, which is absolutely massive. But we are able to take the win. Dragonite into Ariados. Once again, a fantastic lead. I'm surprised Dragonite is core breaking so many teams this high up in ELO, because I feel like Dragonite was very popular pretty early on in this cup. But they are going to stay in this matchup, and they are going to go for a lunge. I am going to overfarm pretty significantly here and then go for the Dragon Claw to knock out the Ariados, and it does. And what is in the back that did not want to see the Dragonite? It is a Primate. So I'm going to overfarm. I'm going to go for the Dragon Claw, and if my opponent wants to shield and farm down, that's fine. We've already grabbed a shield. We've grabbed switch advantage, and their second Pokemon is in the yellow. So we're just going to instantly pivot into our Qwilfish when the Typhlosion comes in. And we have a huge pacing advantage here. And with Typhlosion being so glassy, we can very easily outpace my opponent. But I'm always overfarming to make sure I have energy in case the Primate wants to come back in, because that would force the Primate to throw the energy that they have. And that's exactly what we need. So you can see me overfarming absolutely to the max, like literally to the last Poison Sting, going for 4 Poison Stings there against 2 Incinerates. This forces my opponent to throw energy, and I'm not sure Rage Fist will KO. It is resisted. It does. And I do end up just going for a Bulldoze here. I believe this is a mistake, because it's not enough to KO, but 1 Fairy Wind is enough to knock them out, and I am able to take that win. Grumpig on the lead. This is actually better if you're the non-Shadow Dragonite, just because I think there's a like bulk point there where you take 1 less damage from Psywaves, but this is overall a fairly neutral matchup. I will, because my opponent let that go, I will actually shield and play farm this down. They're 100% going to bait, but they actually have a Diggersby in the back. I'm not quite able to get to a superpower, so I am going to just chip with a Dragon Claw. And then where do I go from here? I'm instantly pivoting into my Qwilfish. I know I can survive 1 Scorching Sands, not comfortably. It will do a lot of damage, but I do have super effective coverage that I can throw right back. So I am going to go for the Ice Beam, which looks to be on CMP with a Fire Punch from my opponent. So maybe hoping to get the KO before I got off my energy, but I was counting. So that's actually huge, because now they're energy dry. And we've got them pretty deep into the red. And what is in the back but a Greninja? So we have a fantastic matchup here. We pretty much just have to go for Bulldozes. These Fairy Winds are doing so much damage. We grab a shield with the first one. I go for a catch. My opponent waits the turn and does not throw, but they're actually forced to throw anyways because they can't Water Shuriken down a Dragonite. And what that does is that allows me to just let this go in case they bait and get a boost. But they do full send the Hydro. I am just going to look to get a full Fairy Wind farm down because I need to come out with energy for the Diggersby or the Grumpig in the back. What are they going to come in with? They're going to come in with the Diggersby. No, they're going to do a Peekaboo play with their Grumpig. I'm able to overfarm here because both of them are energy dry. So I'm not really sure what the point of that Peekaboo play was. Maybe trying to get me to full send a Play Rough onto a low HP Grumpig and then outpace with the Diggersby. So maybe not a potentially terrible thought from my opponent, but it does not work out. And I am able to take that win. Moltres on the lead. We have 2 better answers in the back, so I'm actually going to instantly pivot into my Qwilfish here, and look at that, we bait out our target. We bait out the Mudslapper, which is absolutely massive, because now we can go for an Aqua Tail, and if my opponent doesn't throw, I'm going to make it to an Ice Beam. Now, my opponent has seen the damage of Aqua Tail. They know it will not KO. Do they respect the damage? They do not. So that is absolutely massive because we are able to flip switch without even giving up a shield. And we're not quite able to get to an Ice Beam, but how good is my opponent's counting? Are they willing to risk it? They're not. So we actually grab a shield from my opponent, which is also massive. Now that means I can align Tinkaton against the Moltres. They instantly threw, which makes me think that they are just Brave Birding and dipping. No, they're actually going for an Ancient Power, maybe expecting me to come back in with a Dragonite, but it is a Toxapex in the back. Now, Toxapex only farms up to a Brine here, and yes, this will do some valuable chip damage to the Dragonite, but it is not enough to KO, and this means I can still get to probably 2 more Dragon Claws. So here comes one, my opponent does shield that up, I'm able to get to a second Dragon Claw, and as soon as my opponent uses this last shield, this game is over. They've already used the last shield, but we've already chipped them now into Bulldoze range. I will shield this up because Brine is the only neutral damage my opponent has left on this team. They come back in with the Moltres. No point in going for anything else other than a Play Rough to KO the Moltres here. We're able to outpace as well, and now it's just a pacing game. We are able to get to the Bulldoze in only 5 Fairy Winds versus my opponent, which takes either 8 or 7 Poison Jabs to get to a Brine, which is a terrible move anyways. And we are able to take that win. Dragonite into Greninja once again. This is a great lead, and our opponent is staying in. No, they're going to switch into Amoonguss. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to go for basically a catch on my Qwilfish. I'm unsuccessful, but it doesn't matter because they're forced to throw resisted energy anyways. And yeah, there is the foul play. I'm going to overfarm pretty significantly here, and now I'll go for the Ice Beam. This will be enough to KO the Amoonguss, and it does. So we're able to maintain switch, doing the exact same thing, just going for an Aqua Tail because my opponent knows this is resisted, and it just puts them in a farm down range for either my Dragonite or the Tinkaton. I'm probably just going to keep my Dragonite on the Greninja because I'm not sure what's in the back yet, and it is a Tinkaton of their own. And I kind of make a mistake here. I probably should have superpowered instead of banking that energy because there's no point in banking it there. We're probably going to end up just farming down that Greninja in the end anyways. And my opponent gets a Bulldoze debuff immediately, and we do not. So now this is going to be a very difficult game to play out of. The second Bulldoze, obviously not enough to KO, but it gets the defense drop again. And that means we are in range for a third, and my opponent actually shields, but we do get the defense fall, and I go for a CMP sack swap there. Obviously you can't, because switching takes a turn, we couldn't sack swap there, but we do get a Bulldoze catch, which is absolutely massive, and now I'm baiting with a Dragon Claw. And my opponent does shield, and now that means we can make it to a superpower after only one more Dragon Breath in the middle of their Fairy Wind, which KOs the Tinkaton. And now we are 2 shields and a Tinkaton against a Greninja, which does not have enough energy. So we're able to take that win off of that catch. Fantastic lead in the final match of the video. Dragonite into Swampert. They switch out into a Charjabug. I'm going to go for a catch onto my Tinkaton, and it looks like I was able to sneak a Fairy Wind through there, which is awesome. Discharge is very non-threatening to the Tinkaton, which means I can take 2 of these, and 1 stab Play Rough from the Tinkaton will be enough to KO the Charjabug. So I'm going to overfarm to the absolute max here, go for the knockout blow. This will be enough to KO if my opponent doesn't respect it, and they don't. So the Charjabug just goes down there. They have a Typhlosion in the back, so I'm going to go for 2 and the move. Bulldoze is super effective damage, so I actually grab the shield and then I instantly pivot into the Dragonite. Why am I pivoting? That's because I know they have a Greninja on the lead, which means my Dragonite has play into their final 2 Pokemon, and at this point we've grabbed the last shield, and we have a 2 shield advantage. Qwilfish, sorry, I said Greninja, I meant Swampert, but either way, I can now just come in with the Qwilfish. My opponent ends up committing to the Blast Burn. They do not get there, which means I am able to come out loaded with energy. Either that, or they're just going for fast move pressure, knowing that fast move pressure is potentially the only thing that they have a chance of to win this game. But unfortunately for my opponent, the pacing on Qwilfish is just lightning fast. and they are not going to be able to get to either 3 moves or farm me down before I'm able to get to the Aqua Tail, so we are able to take that win. But yeah, I honestly don't know why this Pokemon hasn't seen as much play as it has. I think the fighters deter it a tiny bit because their pacing is so good, but the pacing that they get to for Rage Fist and Night Slash are both resisted, and it's like the same exact pacing. I think the issue comes down to they have a knockout blow with 1 charge move in close combat if they want to do that, so and the pacing there is a lot better, but to each their own. And then we've got 2 answers to fighters to help it, and then Dragonite on the lead to deal with your grounds that Qwilfish might bait out, and you have super effective coverage for the grounds. I think in terms of either Ice Beam or Dark Pulse or Sludge Bomb kind of thing, Dark Pulse or Sludge Bomb, both better damage by energy moves. They're cheaper, so you can get there quicker. And the most common Mud Slappers are weak to Dark, so if you're going to go for either of them, I would honestly go Dark Pulse. I wouldn't use Ice Beam. I think Ice Beam is good coverage in this meta because a lot of teams are very weak to Ice. But I think Dugong has kind of scared off those teams a little bit. But yeah, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.